Welcome back to Market Makers. Activism is a hot topic on this show this morning. But here's a question for you. Why are activists going after our country's best companies instead of trying to help the worst? I want to bring back Bill George, a man who has seen a lot of companies go through a lot of things. Bill, is it fair to say that activists like Carl Icahn, Nelson Peltz, Bill Ackman are going after the best companies? They would argue they're going after some of the worst who need them.
Well, I certainly think that PepsiCo and DuPont that Nelson Peltz is taking on are two of America's best companies. Amgen, that Dan Loeb's going after, is one of the top performers. And I don't understand it, because if you look at what Indra Nooyi's done at PepsiCo, she's created a heck of a strategy with a very strong franchise, foods, beverages. They're the fastest grower in the food space right now in terms of overall volume. And great performance the last 3 years, up 52%. Coke has got itself going into a cul-de-sac. And just focusing on sugar-based beverages, and they're only growing at about, they're not growing, and they're only half the rate of stock price increase. But if you look at DuPont, that's a good example. Ellen Kullman came in there start of 2009, and she had a conglomerate, if you will, a technical conglomerate, and she has focused on the areas of growth. She's spinning off performance coatings and now performance materials, and focusing on the big growth areas, ag, nutrition, biotech materials, advanced materials, all out of a central R&D, a very clear, well-defined strategy. And frankly, since she took over, her stock's up 250%. So meanwhile, Nelson Peltz comes in there and wants to break it up further. DuPont is a 212-year-old company. It's one of America's great legacy companies, and she's building it for the future. And so I think we need to support people that are doing that and not try to take them apart and have them be very weak players on a global scene like Kraft and Mondelez are right now.
Bill, there's no guarantee that the activist gets what he or she wants. At the very, very, very least, it prompts or provokes a public discussion about the future of the business. And DuPont may end up, remaining the same company it is now, or whatever company it ends up being under the CEO's vision. And Nelson Peltz may not get his way, but it at least forces everybody to think very hard about what the future for the company is going to be.
Well, it does that, but she's been thinking very hard about that. Her board has, and that's exactly what they're doing.
You know, and I know, and Stephanie knows, and lots of people know that that's not the case with all CEOs. And before the activist era, you could make the argument that there were a lot of fat, happy CEOs who didn't think hard enough about the strategic vision for their company and how to maximize shareholder value, if that's in fact what you're in the business to do.
Well, Eric, I think you're in the business to serve your customers long term and create sustainable shareholder value for the long term, not to maximize short term. But I agree with your point. So why don't they go after companies that seem to be drifting, like McDonald's or American Airlines or Yahoo or some of these companies that don't have a clear strategy?
Couldn't you make that argument for Sears? I mean, clearly Eddie Lampert hasn't gotten it right, but they didn't have it right before he joined the party.
That's for sure. I've been critical of Sears for the last 15, 20 years. They've been going downhill for 3 decades, like General Motors was before they went bankrupt and Mary Barra took over. Yeah, these companies have been a long-term decline because they had locked-in boards, and I agree with that. Those are the kind of companies activists should be focused on. My objection is they're going after our best companies. Take Amgen. It's a tight, integral company, and Loeb wants to break it into, the drugs on the market and the drugs coming to market. Well, hey, the whole business model is based upon a central R&D that you use the cash flow from the drugs on the market to fund the future drugs. And it's worked, and their stock price is up, 200% in the last couple of years. So, I mean, I don't understand why they don't focus on the weak companies. I want America to have really strong global players. I don't want to see it broken up like Kraft and Mondelez.
Let's stay on Sears for a moment. We love to criticize Eddie Lampert saying, listen, you know how to make money, but you don't know how to run a retail business. If Eddie hadn't have walked in the door and tried to turn the place around, who should have?
A retailer that knows what they're doing. Someone who can put the place on track. That's what you want to have. You can't have people. Look, it's been demonstrated. Carl Icahn took TWA into bankruptcy. Bill Ackman and Ron Johnson got into real trouble at JCPenney. Eddie Lampert does not know how to run a retail business. It is a total mess. Who shops at Sears? You shop at Sears?
I
can tell you no one in my family does.
I do not.
And so, we need to get somebody that knows how to run the business. Look what happened. Now, there are some good examples. Bob Nardelli, who knew nothing about retail, was taking Home Depot right down, and Ralph Whitworth, of Relational Investors, got involved, saw the problems, and brought Frank Blake on, and they've done really well. So, and now even HP is starting to get on the track.
Bill, it is always great speaking to you. I prefer it when you're sitting next to us, but we'll take in Minneapolis when we have to. Bill George, Harvard Business School professor, and a man who truly knows corporate America.